Welcome back, everyone, to The Great Compromise. I'm GOP Jim, and with me is Victoria the Democrat. Hi, Victoria. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to talk about today's topic.
Today's an interesting one. We have been talking about this on our own time when the microphone is away.
A lot lately, yeah.
It's just been coming up a lot, and so we figured, hey, this might make a good episode. So today we're going to start with a story. Flashback to June, only a couple months ago. Victoria and I were in Portsmouth, New Hampshire for the Pride Parade. And we got there a little late, mostly because we forgot it was happening that day. And so we go to the park, and we don't really get to see the parade because we got there late. But what we see in the park is instead like 30 Trump flags, MAGA people, the Don't Tread on Me. You know what we're talking about, right?
You can already visualize it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people all gathered, rallying against what's happening.
Right. There was a bunch in the park. I imagine it was in protest of the parade, and I didn't really see a lot of people there. I think they just set it up and left it to annoy. And for the most part, people were ignoring it, which is good. But for us, it was kind of a striking moment, right? Like, we live in New Hampshire, and in particular, the Seacoast, New Hampshire is pretty liberal, at least socially liberal. And even me as a Republican, I was like, that's not right. Like, obviously, they are here in protest, and it was just shocking for us to see.
It was shocking to see, especially because, when I talk to people and what I experienced just living in the Seacoast, New Hampshire area, is that, people are really, like you said, liberal and accepting. I've even read accounts recently of people that are, in the LGBTQ community, and they moved to the Northeast, and they're like, oh, I can finally, relax a little bit here. So it's really surprising to hear, or to see all those demonstrators.
Right. We don't really see that here. And, we assumed it was for the Pride Parade, but a week ago, 2 weeks ago, we were back in that park, and it had been since then, probably since we were there. And those flags are still set up. I guess those people just go every day.
They've been camping out all summer? I don't know.
I don't know exactly the degree to how long they've been there or why they're there. We assumed it was in protest of the parade, but they're just there every day. It feels so weird that even here in New Hampshire, we have these MAGA people doing these things. Well, that leads me to my next point, which is we just had the primary election last week. And the three candidates who won for Senate and our two Congress were all MAGA people. Heavy MAGA people.
Absolutely shocking.
Yeah, I don't think any of us saw it coming. They're polling, they were all behind, and then they just swept it. It feels so odd that, they're election deniers, right? They actually think Trump won the election and isn't in because of widespread voter fraud. And actually, one of them backtracked days after the election, which was really funny. But who knows what he actually believes, right?
Oh, wow.
It was days after the election, and he may have said that just to get the votes to win, but, he's still heavy MAGA.
But it's surprising that got him the votes. Again, we're in New Hampshire. This isn't Texas.
Right. And this is more than just a New Hampshire problem.
Yes.
This is a problem with MAGA versus the regular GOP around the country.
Yeah. So that's what we want to talk about today, is differentiating between the Republican Party and the MAGA supporters and not grouping them together, which seems to be a bigger issue these days.
Speaking of this recent primary, the Brookings Institution just released some polling data on it. According to them, Trump endorsed less than 13% of GOP candidates, but more than 96% of those he endorsed won the primaries. Most Republican candidates nearly 60%, put no mention of Trump or anything MAGA on their website. But only 30% of those candidates who didn't push Trumpism won. I mean, we just have to look at Liz Cheney, right? She was leading the House investigation into January 6th, and she lost her primary back home. So what does this tell us? That most Republican candidates are not MAGA, but the MAGA candidates are the ones who succeed. What do you make of this?
I don't understand this.
Yeah.
What is happening? Is it that not enough people are going to the polls? Like, that doesn't seem like the problem.
We had less turnout here.
In the primary.
Yeah.
I don't understand the appeal, the attraction to MAGA in the first place. But, like, among GOP, I still feel like they're the minority. So why are they winning in the primary? I don't know what's happening. So I have some statistics from the Washington Post. They wrote this really great article just kind of condensing a lot of polls and statistics from voters to try and differentiate who is either a Republican in the nation or who is an independent that leans Republican a lot of the time, versus in that group who would be defined like as a MAGA supporter. So in their polls, they were able to define that 28% of the country identifies as a Republican and 41% identify as independent but lean Republican. So around 45% of American adults are Republican or leaning Republican in their independent status. So that's 45%, right? Like that's
roughly half the country.
Roughly half, good amount. But that's about 15% that we can try and like distill down to a MAGA supporter. 45 versus 15, like definitely minority. So what is happening? I don't know. So the way that they have tried to figure this out is by asking about current events through polling questions. Things like, do you think that Biden didn't legitimately win in 2020? And 15% of the country said that they agree that Biden did not legitimately win. 14% of Republicans said that they support election-denying candidates. 6% of Republicans said that they supported Trump and people taking over the Capitol. 15% of voters said that they believe violence against the government can sometimes be justified. So the highest percentage amongst all of those poll questions was 15%. And so that's what I'm going with, is that like 15% of our voters in the US could be defined as MAGA. So that's, again, 15% versus 45%. So that's a small percent of Republicans that are MAGA. And yet somehow in the media and public perception, we're grouping together MAGA supporters and Republicans. And now all Republicans are just being vilified. And it's becoming a big problem.
Most recently by President Biden.
Yes, thank you. Okay, Biden's speech in early September, literally, he mentioned 50 million MAGA Republicans.
Yeah, there's not that many.
No, like we just said, it's 15%.
There is some disconnect right now with the Republican Party, right? This loud MAGA minority is starting to take over the more quiet majority of reasonable Republicans. At least it feels that way, right? And that leads the Republicans in office to try and appeal to that louder MAGA base, which in turn is giving that MAGA base more power.
But that's exactly what you don't do when a child is misbehaving. You do not fuel their bad behavior, okay? Like, that just gives them the attention that they're looking for, and then they continue misbehaving.
But they're the ones voting, right?
I don't care. We need to squash it.
It may just be that simple, right? The guy here who ran for Senate and was an election denier in the primary, and then as soon as he won the election, changed his mind. Maybe it's just that simple. Maybe he and all these others are just appealing to that loud voting base. But regardless, they're making us all look bad. And by us all, I mean Republicans.
Yeah. And then you get to a place where, and I will admit that the Democrats my age are particularly guilty of making any Republican they know the bad guy, right? Where all of a sudden it's like this black and white game of like, oh, well, you should know better than to be a Republican, or like, oh, are you a Republican so you probably didn't get vaccinated? And it's just like this weird misconception of every Republican has like some skewed like far right view, but it's misrepresenting the whole. Like that is not what our nation is. That's maybe 15% or less of what people are thinking.
And it is like demonizing, right? I mean, we read how many stats and stories about like Democrats don't want to be friends with Republicans. Democrats don't want to work with Republicans. Democrats don't want to date Republicans. And the reverse is not true. Republicans are fine with it.
Right.
And I've always found that, well, this is more of a recent development, but I find it very interesting that,
Yeah.
I mean, Republicans really haven't changed. It's the MAGA, the growing MAGA that has changed, and it's changing the perception of the GOP. Back to the story about the flags in the park, it's embarrassing. It's more than embarrassing because they were protesting a pride parade, but when we went last week and there was nothing to even protest, it's embarrassing for me as a lifelong Republican to be associated with them. And that is what I am. I am guilty by association that we are even in the same party. But this is a two-party system, right? Like, there's nowhere else for me to go, even if I am vastly different from them.
Right.
Regardless of what kind of Republican I am, it's felt almost dangerous to tell people that I am lately. I'm genuinely worried that they will think that I'm in the MAGA crowd, even if I'm clearly not. My stances have not changed in years. In years. It's the party that's starting to change, and it feels like it's moving away from me. And it's that vocal MAGA mob that is doing it, or at least it feels like it's doing it.
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean. And I feel like it's not fair to you. And I've seen people give you a hard time and like make assumptions about you, which is just like really, really hurtful. And I feel like really doesn't give people like a chance to fully know you, because like there's a part of people these days that like really shut down once they hear something, right? Like there's something about like learning this and then they shut down about allowing like any more information to be learned. Mm-hmm. So now it's coming to a place where it's like, is this even the setting for this conversation? Like there's not going to be room for more conversation in this setting. If like we're with close friends or whatever, then it's different, because they've known you forever. Mm-hmm. But it's just getting to be like a really uninhabitable environment, which is really weird because like we're all Americans.
It's just politics, right?
It's really strange. It's really strange now.
It's just politics. It shouldn't define who you are, but these MAGA people let it take over their whole lives, and it literally defines who they are because they want it that way. I don't want it that way, but because they have it that way, and I'm a Republican, therefore it is that way. Mm-hmm. It's crazy to think how, this party has changed just in my lifetime, or even just the perception to it. I had a friend who wrote an article for the Daily Beast, and I will link the article in the episode description, and I definitely recommend everyone reads it.
It was really good.
Yeah, it's called "I'm a Young Queer Conservative. The GOP Lied to Me." And in it, she talks about how the majority of the Republican Party finally supported gay marriage until very recently. And now it seems like the conservative movement has traded its soul to appease a backward-looking minority of its base. I just want to read a couple quotes from it. "I became more assured that Republicans had embraced gay marriage in 2016 when Donald Trump held a pride flag on the campaign trail. This was something that no GOP presidential candidate had done before. Ever. Whatever you think about Trump, this was clearly a sign that Republicans were moving in the right direction." Let's think about that. 2016 was not that long ago.
No.
The Supreme Court had said that gay marriage was legal the year before that, even. Republicans were moving on. And now, MAGA Republicans are so fervently against gay marriage. We hear the term groomer getting thrown around a lot. It's always in the wrong context, always weaponizing against the LGBTQ. There was a vote to codify gay marriage in Congress, and only 40-something Republicans voted to support it, and the rest were against it. And it's like, okay, if this MAGA base wasn't around, and this was back 2016, would that have been voted on by Republicans? And I think the answer is yes.
Things have changed so much in so little time. It's insane.
Caitlyn Jenner was a Fox News contributor, and she ran for office as a Republican. Do you remember that? That wasn't that long ago.
I forgot.
And so, how far we've come in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And not for the better.
No, definitely not.
And talking about Trump holding a pride flag, it appears he's lost control of this MAGA base.
Oh, yeah.
The Trump administration did Operation Warp Speed, which, for those of you who don't know, funded the COVID vaccine research. And it was a project that was ready. It was funding the research, and it was ready to go to distribute the vaccines as soon as they were done.
Mm-hmm.
And Operation Warp Speed, love him or hate him, saved a lot of lives. It got the vaccines out to all, everyone who wanted it, and how that went. Not exactly well, but it got the job done, saved a lot of lives. We probably won't even know how many lives it saved, honestly. And that was under the Trump administration.
Right.
And now you can't convince his base, these MAGA people, to get the shot. Like, even Trump at his rallies are like, he's touting Operation Warp Speed. He's trying to get ready to run for re-election. And they're booing him at his own rallies when he's talking about getting the vaccine.
Yeah.
He's lost control of this. I'm not sure he ever had it, but control has officially been lost.
Right.
And this is where we are now.
No, it's true. He strikes me, you think back to Trump, the man that had Trump Tower with his name giant all over these towers. This is a man that, wants to be known. He wants people carrying banners with his name and wearing hats and everything. He just wants a crowd of people saying his name. I don't know how important it is to him that they have all the values he holds, that they're all in alignment.
Maybe it's not important to him. As long as he has their votes, who cares? More than just his name on flags, I've seen, hilariously stupid bad photoshops of Trump's face on some jack dude's body holding an AK and an American flag, and riding a bald eagle. And, these people aren't doing it ironically. They're doing it seriously. And it would be funny if it wasn't so sad.
I would like to know where this is all coming from. What really is the mindset of an extreme MAGA supporter? Why have we gotten to this place? Why are we so extreme and so full of venom? What's at the root of that? I seriously cannot wrap my head around it.
The state of politics right now are just so divisive. It was almost inevitable that it led to this, right? And it's easy to point to MAGA as being that extreme right.
I know the extreme left is a big problem too. I'm not only pointing the finger. I think extreme rigidity in either end is a problem.
Yeah, to go back to the Daily Beast article that my friend wrote, she got a huge amount of backlash from that. And I didn't see backlash from Republicans when she wrote that. I saw backlash from the supposedly liberal left, who were saying, oh, you got what you deserved. You voted for Republicans. You weren't lied to. You lied to yourself. And you deserve this. And, it was venomous from the left, too, even though, well, I'll let you read and decide. But to me, the article was very true to how we are. And she was criticizing Republicans, and I think she was criticizing MAGA Republicans more specifically. Mm-hmm. And she still got that backlash from the left, who, by all rights, should be on her side.
Yeah, I read the article. I thought it was really well written and really vulnerable, and I appreciated where she was coming from, especially where that's a unique situation of someone coming forward and vocalizing being like identifying one way and being a member of a party that isn't always supportive of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a vulnerable thing to come forward with. And then the comments, as always, you're like, did you read the article? Like, why are you saying that? Did you even read what this woman wrote? It doesn't make any sense. And the left can be really mean, like just really mean, where you're not sure that they're supporting someone that's also an LGBTQ member. You know, why would you be so hurtful? None of it makes sense.
You know, we may see some kind of left MAGA equivalent come out one of these days.
It's possible.
It's possible.
Definitely, there's room for that. It's heading in a direction.
The political landscape is ripe for that at this moment, right? Like, it didn't just make a far right version. Like, we're extreme on both sides. It's just we happen to have a group we can point to and say that's MAGA. You know, like that's what it is. It's bad right now.
It's bad where people are like refusing to go to businesses that don't agree with them politically. People are refusing to have anything to do with the other side. And that's dangerous no matter what side you're pointing fingers at.
You know, that being said, I think it's safe to say we can avoid the MAGA crowd. I'm not going to go over to those people who set up the flags in the park and shake their hand. But I'm also not going to go over there and kick them over. You know, that's not the way to fight this. The way to fight this is to vote for regular Republicans, which I did, and it was very close, by the way. And for the leaders, the elected officials who are on the right, to actually do what they believe in and not just do what their voters want or what they think is going to get them reelected, right?
Right. I'm just really tempted to get everyone into therapy, right? Like, yeah, I don't want to like sit down and have a conversation with, you know, all these MAGA protesters, but I would like to encourage them to talk to someone and see what's really going on.
There's probably something else going on there, right? Like, you don't go through all that.
There has to be. I don't know what it is, but
For
there has
no
to
reason.
be.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Great Compromise podcast. It's been 1 year, so thank you for listening and for sticking around and for making sure that all of your friends are following us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, you name it. Thank you.